Wolfpack, what is going on? It's your boy, the Wolf of Roto Street, rotostreetjournal.com. We breed and feed you fantasy wolves. Thrilled to welcome on for the second time Mr. Sam Factor, the CEO over at WalterPicks, an app that can help you dominate your drafts and in-season fantasy prep through AI and machine learning. It's an awesome. I just always impressed with what you're building over there, Sam, and how you're always innovating in the game. So cool. But thanks so much for coming on this Labor Day Monday morning. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing great, man. Season's around the corner. Pumped to be back on this show. It's a while back we did this, and yeah, I'm pumped. It's gonna be a fun one.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're doing bold predictions to kick it off here. Really just a few more days left of draft prep. So this is kind of just us putting our flags in a few players, few bold predictions that we actually think genuinely have a shot to come true. We're going to do one for each position each. So 8 total bold predictions. I say we just dive right in and hit it from the top. I'll kick us off with my bold prediction, and that is for the quarterback position. Daniel Jones has a diet Josh Allen breakout coming. I cannot wait to hear whether you disagree or think I'm absolutely insane here. But we've already seen the Konami upside. He only had 4 less rush yards per game than Josh Allen last year, ranking 4th in rushes, 120, 708 rush yards were 5th, and his 7 touchdowns were 3rd among quarterbacks. We already know he's got that quote-unquote Konami upside that just boosts the floor and ceiling of any QB that has the leg points. QB9 last year, only 15 touchdowns. I really think that could double this season. One, just because Darren Waller, I know it's not like a Stephon Diggs upgrade. I mentioned Josh Allen, but it is pretty damn close to a true wide receiver one getting involved there. Changes the entire complexion of the offense. Never mind Jalen Hyatt, some game-breaking speed for a vertical offense with a nice deep slinger. And from last year, week 7 on, Daniel Jones was the quarterback 6, and he was throwing to no one. The only players he was behind was Jalen Hurts, Pat Mahomes, Justin Fields, Joe Burrow, and Josh Allen. Pretty good company to be in 60% of his games from that point on when they finally seemed to give him the keys and commit to him. He was a top 12 quarterback 60% of the time that point on. And again, now with better weapons, I think bumping his passing stats to maybe even 4,000 yards, 25-ish TDs. If you did that with last year's rushing totals, he would have been the quarterback 4 in fantasy. The last point, too, that I just think is pointing towards this breakout is year 2 under Brian Daboll. We saw Josh Allen, first year as a starter, solid quarterback 14, 3,089 yards, 20 passing touchdowns. Very similar stats to what we saw from Daniel Jones last year. In year 2, Allen goes all the way up to the quarterback 3, 4,546 yards, 37 touchdowns. That second year of tutelage, the weapon upgrades, the line has looked phenomenal all preseason. Jones himself, 8 of 9, 65 yards and a TD. And I know you don't want to overreact to preseason, but just the fact they let him sling it 9 times in 12 plays and that he looked so on point, it was just effortless driving down the field. I think this offense is going to hit a new gear. And in that division, tons of shootouts brewing. I love Daniel Jones to absolutely blow up in 2023 and be a top 5 quarterback. What do you think, Sam?
I like this one a lot, Nick. I think the Josh Allen comparison, that might be a little bit of wishful thinking there, but top 5, I would put that within his range of outcomes this season. I think we have a ceiling in the WalterPicks app at 7, but we actually have him ranked at 10. He's just behind Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert here. And for all the reasons that you said, he has the rushing floor, which to me that raises his floor. And yeah, he added a bunch of weapons. His ceiling can definitely go up this year. Second year under Daboll, like you said. So yeah, I like this one a lot. I think best case scenario for him is likely like closer to QB7, but that's not that far from QB5. And the other thing about Daniel Jones, like you mentioned, I mean, it's hard to understate the weapons he was working with last year. Isaiah Hodgins was his top receiver for the better part of the back end of the season. He's back this year. Wando Robinson's getting healthy. Sterling Shepard's getting healthy. They draft Jalen Hyatt. They bring in Darren Waller. Saquon is entering the season fully healthy. I mean, the weapons this year to last year is one of the biggest upgrades of any quarterback this offseason. So I definitely like this one. I've been drafting him pretty aggressively in best ball right around that QB 10 area.
I know he goes at quarterback. All offseason he was quarterback 15. Now he's all the way up to quarterback 12 or so. I'm a sicko. I actually have around 40% ownership because whether I got him as my number 1 or my number 2, I just couldn't stop gobbling him up. For a while, Darren Waller was going in like round 8, 9. So that became my de facto in those sick early drafts that we do. That became my go-to stack, and I love it. I'm so happy I have it. But we'll see what ends up happening. I know what can go wrong. 40% Daniel Jones.
Yeah, and in season long too, I think if you wait on QB, I'm looking at Daniel Jones. I'm looking at Anthony Richardson. That's pretty much it. Those are the 2 guys with the rushing floor. A-Rich definitely has a lot lower of a floor in terms of his range of outcomes as a passer. But I think those are the two guys that make a lot of sense in season long if you pass on QB early.
Absolutely. Well, I love the one you have here, especially if you're not passing on QB. I'm fully on board with this. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about Justin Herbert as your bold prediction.
Yeah, so my bold prediction here is that Justin Herbert finishes as a top 3 fantasy football quarterback this season. This might not sound that bold just because we've seen Justin Herbert. I think he finished in his best season as QB4. He averaged actually QB2 in 2021. He averaged the second most fantasy points per game at quarterback. This really is bold, though, just because you think the other elite quarterbacks that are out there, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, is going to have to beat one of those guys at least. And he doesn't give us that rushing floor. But there's a lot of reasons for optimism for Herbert, who's getting one of the better coaching upgrades of the offseason. Last year, the Chargers, he averaged 6.8 yards per attempt, which ranked 25th in the NFL. His career average before that was right around the 7.4 range. If he can just return to that 7.4 range, he's going to be a top 5 quarterback in fantasy football. And if he can exceed that under his new offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, who we know likes to stretch the field, I like that they're talking about putting Mike Williams into the slot more, moving Keenan Allen out wide. It's going to be a much less predictable offense this year. Justin Herbert has all the tools to the next fantasy season be in this conversation with Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts. We've basically already seen it from him in just his second season. Now he's entering year 4. He also dealt with injuries last year, which definitely played a role in that yards per attempt. So there's a lot of reasons for optimism. He has one of the better supporting casts. I know Quentin Johnston, it sounds like Josh Palmer is going to play over him to start the season, but at least there's something exciting kind of mulling in that receiver room for the later half of the season when we know Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, they've dealt with injuries, Josh Palmer as well over the past few years. And I'm excited to see what Quentin Johnston can add to this offense too. So yeah, I'm all in on Justin Herbert. He's been my second highest owned QB in best ball. I've drafted him in, I think, 3 of my 7 season long leagues. I think he's got a really high floor, extremely high ceiling. We have it with a ceiling of QB2 in the WalterPicks app. I'm all in on Justin Herbert this season. I'm interested to hear what you think about this one.
I'm all in as well. He actually came out of the QB2 in my projections, which had my mind blown at first. And then it makes complete sense. I love the Kellen Moore upgrade, as you said. With the Cowboys, they were first, and 6th in points per game in his 4 seasons there. 5th, first, and first in yards. And these are games with Dak Prescott. Of course, he dealt with some injuries there. But while he was there, according to Pat Thorman, also 2nd, first, and 4th in pace. 1st, 2nd, 1st, and 6th in total plays. So big pie. You love it. Dak was the QB3, QB1, and QB6 through his first 3 seasons under Kellen Moore. 24, 32, and 24 points per game. Yes, 32 points per game. Any of you that were playing just a few seasons ago, remember when Dak went down, it was like the biggest injury in fantasy. And I think Herbert's a 10 times better quarterback than Dak Prescott. So with Brandon Staley already saying, I'm staying out of Kellen Moore's way. I can't believe we have him. I'm just going to let this guy cook. I can't wait to see what this pairing does. I am 100% with you, especially because you can get him in the 5th or so round, 4th, 5th turn. And I think I agree 100% his ceiling is just as high as any of those bigger name quarterbacks you're getting a full round or 2 earlier. I love this call. I think you could really honestly, maybe you take a step bolder. I could see him breaking Peyton Manning's passing game record this year if all these pieces merge together as I think they could. And you mentioned Quentin Johnston too. That was like one issue with this offense is if Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, they've had their injury woes in the past. I think Quentin Johnston really stabilizes that though. Because as you mentioned, Palmer might be above him now, but just another, if no one gets hurt, you got a great quad of receivers there. And if somebody goes down, you just have somebody more natural to step up into those roles. So the floor is higher, the ceiling is higher. I cannot wait to see what this Chargers team does. I'm fully aligned with this one. I think this is a phenomenal call. I can't wait to hear what you have for your receiver to kind of stack up with this one too, because I love that guy as well. We'll move on to the running back, but if you're tuned in, that thumbs up button does greatly help us grow Wolfpack. So please do consider hitting that thumbs up for us. Getting us out to more people would mean the world. Moving on to the running back position. This is a guy I actually haven't talked about much, but really just as early as this weekend, a gut kind of call came to me, and I wanted to get on record because I don't know why I haven't been all in on J.K. Dobbins yet. And I was sitting there thinking his parallels really remind me of last year's Josh Jacobs. Ugly kind of offseason to start. He's holding in. He's quote-unquote hurt. He's not showing up to camp. And so his price continues to get driven down because of that. He's back now, and all reports are, one, being used way more in the passing game. And I know, believe it when I see it, Lamar Jackson has never historically thrown to his running backs, but I also don't believe it was a staple of the play calling all reports in this new Todd Monken scheme, which I just want any piece I can get, whether it's Dobbins, whether it's receivers, Lamar himself, Andrews. I am so excited to see what this Ravens team does. But in the running game, I could see Dobbins just completely separating from Gus Edwards and Justice Hill because I think the talent gap. This is kind of what happened with Josh Jacobs. It was going to be a committee, and it was, driving down. Amir Abdullah is going to take all the receptions. And then ultimately in this new scheme and McDaniel's scheme for Jacobs, he was just so much better than everyone else around him that he ended up getting 89, 90% of the work. I could see that happening here with J.K. Dobbins just being the talent gap in this new explosive offense. Last year when he came back from injury, didn't even really look fully healthy, and still for those final 4 games ran for the 5th most yards in the league. He had the highest yards per carry in the league at 7.0, and he was getting caught from behind, something you didn't see with J.K. Dobbins as a rookie. So I'm very excited, especially in that last game too. 20.5 fantasy points in the playoffs. Nice 4 catches, 5 targets, 43 and a score. Maybe a precursor to what we're going to see in this Monken offense. They were asking Dobbins, is it true? Are you guys catching the ball more often? And he just kind of smiled and laughed and said, you'll see. Oh, you will see. And I was like, all right, this guy is excited. He's fired up to be here. And so you bump up, even 40, 50 catches to what I think could be an easy 1,000 yards, 10 touchdown season at a 5th, 6th round price, still falling because of that early offseason concerns. I love the range he's going. He's kind of that mid-round breakout running back I think could mimic Josh Jacobs last year and be a true RB1. What do you think of Dobbins, Sam?
Yeah, I really like that you brought this one up because this is a guy that I baited, I think, too much early on in best ball season because of what was going on. He wasn't practicing. And I think everyone has that play still like etched in their mind that you kind of mentioned of. He broke away and then like just kind of lost the gas like late in a deep run, which you just didn't see from him in the past. Gives you that thought of, is he ever going to be himself again after his injuries? We're now 2 years removed from those, though. We have seen him still, despite getting caught deep down the field, ranked top 5 in true yards per carry each of his 2 seasons in the league. And part of this, too, there's been a lot of research on Lamar Jackson's effect on running backs and how hard it is to stop running backs in the Lamar Jackson offense, because you also have to plan for Lamar Jackson. His running backs historically average like 50% more yards per carry than the average baseline running back. And it's not like his whole career he's had these amazing running backs to play with. I definitely agree. A fully healthy J.K. Dobbins, the talent gap in this offense in the running back position is really not that close. From J.K. Dobbins to Gus Edwards to Justice Hill, maybe Justice Hill's ahead of Gus Edwards. I think Gus Edwards is fine, but he's certainly not going to give you the talent level that J.K. Dobbins is going to give you. The pass game stuff is the thing I think I was maybe overlooking the most after hearing that comment from J.K. Dobbins and thinking through this new offense. He hasn't eclipsed a 6.5% target share each of his 2 seasons. But like you said, there's some reasons that can change. There's a new offensive coordinator in town. They're going to throw a lot more. They're also expected to run a lot more plays. So I like this one a lot. It's not like you have to spend crazy to get him. A lot of times ADP is sticky, right? And because his ADP was so suppressed early in the offseason, we haven't seen him climb that crazy in terms of average draft position. You can get him round 6, round 7, round 8. I definitely still like him a little bit more in the half PPR, non-PPR formats. But yeah, if he hits his ceiling case in PPR and starts getting 5-6 targets a game, I mean, look out for J.K. Dobbins for sure. We have a ceiling at RB11 in the WalterPicks app that is inside the top 12. So I think I'm going to have to agree with you on this bold prediction, certainly within his range of outcomes. My biggest concern is just they ease him in. They don't give him too big of a workload because of the injury history, because they know these other running backs can do just good enough. And we kind of seen that from the Ravens in the past. But yeah, if the talent gap wins out, I like the Josh Jacobs comparison a lot.
Awesome. I appreciate it. I love that you guys project too with that ceiling case in mind. Like it's so useful because we can all have our median projections, and that's what most people, including myself, do. But it is really useful to just see the range of outcomes for a player. That's such a great feature of your WalterPicks app. I think that's phenomenal. And I love this. This is a really interesting running back here that I cannot wait to hear your take on. David Montgomery falling right now to around 7-8. Your bold prediction. What do we got for David Montgomery?
Yeah, I mean, his average draft position, especially on a few of the platforms, I think it's Sleeper and Yahoo. I mean, he's going outside the top 32 running backs on some of these platforms, which is really, really crazy to think about. I actually really love pairing him with Jahmyr Gibbs, who I think I'm going to talk about Gibbs and Monty on this one because I don't think you're going to hit on Gibbs in your bold prediction. I don't want this to sound like I'm out on Gibbs because I'm definitely not. But I'm in on this backfield overall. So I'll start with David Montgomery. So first of all, Lions, they lead the NFL in running back points per game in fantasy last year. Jamal Williams scores 17 rushing touchdowns. Jamal Williams, I would put, maybe like a little bit ahead of a guy like Gus Edwards, who we were just talking about, like not this crazy talented guy, finds him, but coaches trust him and he's reliable and he's a good goal line back in the NFL. David Montgomery is now entering the Jamal Williams role. At least that's what we expect. Jamal Williams leaves for the Saints. He'll probably have a pretty big role with Alvin Kamara suspended for the first 3 games. But Jahmyr Gibbs gets drafted with the 12th overall pick. And I think this is the main reason we're seeing David Montgomery go so late in drafts. But we know from last year, this offense isn't going to be all that different than last year. They use both running backs a lot. I mean, DeAndre Swift, everyone knew he was more efficient than Jamal Williams. Didn't matter. Jamal Williams getting the goal line carries, getting 10, 15 carries a game, scores 17 rushing touchdowns. I think David Montgomery is pretty clearly better than Jamal Williams. David Montgomery has never played behind an offensive line like this. He's been stuck behind, an abysmal Chicago offensive line, and he still has been more efficient than what we've seen out of Jamal Williams in the past. So I think that David Montgomery is very much in the cards to lead the league in rushing touchdowns. So my bold prediction here is that David Montgomery finishes as a top 15 running back in fantasy football. He's getting drafted outside the top 25 on every single platform. We actually have him ranked just 2 spots ahead of J.K. Dobbins, who we were just talking about. We're giving his ceiling. His ceiling is only RB14, so lower ceiling than J.K. Dobbins because, Jahmyr Gibbs is there. He's not going to hit this crazy pass game ceiling, but I do think he can also catch more than the 40 targets he had on the Bears because they throw to the running backs a ton in this offense. That's why they led the league in running back fantasy points, along with the touchdowns, of course. So, yeah, I'm very bullish on this offensive line. To me, it's a pretty clear top 3 offensive line in the NFL. I think David Montgomery is a big improvement over Jamal Williams. And I think there's a pretty clear story to tell there of David Montgomery scoring 12-plus touchdowns, finishing as a top 15 running back in fantasy football. He's been one of my most aggressively drafted players in best ball and in season long. I really like pairing these two together, though. Jahmyr Gibbs has the 3rd highest projected target share among running backs in our projections. It's McCaffrey, Eckler, and it's Gibbs. And I think Kamara's maybe 4th. He's obviously suspended, so the numbers are a little bit weird there. But there's a range of outcomes for Gibbs, too, where he leads all running backs in receiving yards. And I think that, there's already been a lot of talk about that from their general manager, I think even just this past week. But Jahmyr Gibbs is going like early 3rd round in most season-long drafts. At that point in the draft, I'm pressing the button on Jahmyr Gibbs almost every single time. And I really, like I said, I like pairing both of them because it's a really high floor play. Usually I don't like 2 running backs in the same team, but the Lions are one of those unique examples where they can give so many touches to their running backs through the air and at the goal line that it really is a high floor and high ceiling play, I think, to have both of them, especially in a season-long league. I think it's going to be really rare that we don't see at least one of these guys score 15 points in a given week. So yeah, that's my bold take on David Montgomery. I know you were considering a Jahmyr Gibbs bold prediction. Interested to hear your take on both these guys.
Yeah, I'm fully with you. I think the entire backfield is one to target at both prices. I had Jahmyr Gibbs similar to how WalterPicks projected him out. I actually had him come out for 90 catches, and I wasn't entering my projection process. I wasn't a huge fan of. I'm a huge fan of the player, but I wasn't going in. I tried to go in without biases, but every now and again, you have a player in mind you like, and you might uptick the projections just a tad. And I didn't have that bias for Jahmyr Gibbs. And I'm entering the projections and just doing out the target shares. I kind of go by team total plays, then shares. And so I'm just kind of entering what I expected. And sure enough, Jahmyr Gibbs comes out as an RB7 in my projections without me even trying to be bullish or, overdoing it. And I was like, how'd this happen? 90 receptions ended up being where I landed on, just given Jameson Williams is suspended for the beginning of the year. I know Sam Laporta getting a lot of steam. He maybe emerges as a number 2-3 option, but behind ASB, I really don't see who else is going to be catching the ball and all the hype. I mean, what did Ben Johnson say this weekend? Like, we're going to use him in ways that nobody else is expecting. And let's hope that doesn't mean like kick return or something of that nature. I imagine he's going to be on the field plenty with David Montgomery, though, which is why I think you can use them both. I had him come out, Jahmyr Gibbs, as a top 7 running back in PPR and top 12 in half PPR. And that's with projecting David Montgomery to score 15 touchdowns. Because I fully agree with you. He's absolutely taken in that Jamal Williams role, maybe even Jamal Williams. Plus, they could have signed Jamal Williams back, a team legend. The team obviously loved him, and then they still let him go for half the price. They signed David Montgomery for double the money that Jamal Williams made. So clearly they see some sort of steep upgrade here. So this is definitely a backfield I think can coexist. They definitely have more carved out roles. Plus, if you never want injury, but if something did happen to one or the other, you're probably looking at a number 3 running back in fantasy with the total volume completely monopolized in this backfield if injury strikes either of them. So I think it's great. If both stay healthy, they're going to be awesome. If one went down, you got an absolute fantasy monster. So I'm fully there with you. I want any pieces of this Lions backfield and really just the team. I love Amon-Ra St. Brown too. I think this team could definitely take another step forward under Dan Campbell, Jared Goff. I'm just the line. You can't emphasize it enough as well. I think it is an absolute monster line. So I'm fully aligned with you. I think this is a phenomenal prediction. We've made it too easy on ourselves. We both like all these players that we picked.
And one last thought on Gibbs here is I built over the last 3 years a running back prospect model that I try to use during the draft. And when I first ran that this year, I actually had Gibbs ahead of Bijan because it really, really weights the receiving stuff because it's a PPR model. And then he went 4 picks after him in the draft. I think it's really interesting just to compare where Bijan's going in fantasy drafts, first round in almost every league. Gibbs going in the early third, and it's because people view Bijan as more likely to get this like massive workhorse role. I don't know if that's really the case. I think the Falcons also have kind of shown us they will mix in multiple backs too. I think if comparing those two, I'm taking Gibbs over Bijan at price pretty much all day long.
It terrifies me, but I have such minimal Bijan, and I love the player. But I fully agree with you there. I think it's much more of a committee than people might be expecting. Algier ran for 1,000 yards last year. It seems like a pretty similar situation to what we're dealing with the Lions, other than a worse overall offense and worse, So I'm with you there. I do not have a ton of Bijan. I have a ton of Gibbs. And just going back to the draft too. I mean, we all remember that video when they landed Gibbs and their coach is going nuts and the owner, they're freaking out. And don't forget, Dan Campbell did come from the Saints too. They had that. He was there when they had Alvin Kamara going absolutely bananas. So Swift has obviously been heavily involved. And I believe the Tim Twentyman, a guy's been there forever. The beat writer said this is by far the most impressive receiving back I've seen. And they've had some good receiving backs. I mean, Reggie Bush was there for a while, and Jameer Best had some season, tossed out some crazy days. But yeah, I can't wait to see how they use Gibbs. But that doesn't, I think, come at the expense of Montgomery also being a top 24 running back. I got him in round 8 the other night in my first college league, a home league draft. And this is amazing. I take my running back 2 to round 8, and I got a guy that's going to score 15 touchdowns. Awesome. I'm all about it. I'm fully there with you. Moving on to the wide receiver position, I cannot wait to see what Jahan Dotson does in his sophomore season. I think he's going to finish as a top 12 receiver and actually outscore Terry McLaurin, his teammate, who goes ahead of him right now in drafts by a fairly wide margin. And even with a healthy McLaurin, I think Dotson was talented enough to potentially emerge as the wide receiver 1 year. I had him as a rookie last year and just saw so many glimpses of talent. The guy had 61 targets, 35 receptions, only 77th among receivers, and yet still finished with the 14th most touchdowns, 7 scores there, wide receiver 6 in points per target. And I think those targets are absolutely going to be coming up this season because, one, if McLaurin is limited, we know the turf toe injury happened. So if he's limited and hurt, immediately he ascends Jahan Dotson to the number 1 here. He drew 5 straight targets as soon as McLaurin left. He finishes his preseason with 7 catches on 9 targets, 106 yards, and a TD. Again, I know not to overreact to preseason stats. Maybe he was facing some backups, but I just overall from the preseason, one thing I do like to track is how is a new offense going to look? And under Eric Bieniemy, you saw it already. Sam Howell looks unbelievable. 37 attempts, 28 completions, 265 yards, and 3 touchdowns for him. So I love the quarterback play. I love how often they were slinging it. Because obviously he comes over from the Chiefs. He had Mahomes, he had Andy Reid. What's he really going to be like? I mean, we saw the mismatch be moving Antonio Gibson into the slot and catching a touchdown. And it just seems like he's putting a lot of those pieces in place. And I know Howell is not Mahomes. I'm not ever going to draw a psycho comparison like that. But just to see this offense being so fast-paced, so aerial, and that Jahan Dotson was the centerpiece of it and looking phenomenal as ever. I really think he's going to go for, I have him going for 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns, but I think his ceiling, especially if McLaurin's injury lingers, but even if not, this kid has the it factor, and I think he will. McLaurin's had his time to truly emerge as like that dominant wide receiver 1, and I love the player. Very, very solid. It could be a number 1 in regular offenses in NFL terms, but I think Dotson has a gear that maybe McLaurin doesn't, and I'm excited to see him continue to separate this year. I could definitely see him even going if this offense clicks as well as he did this preseason, and that just continues the rest of the year. 1,200 to 1,400 yards, maybe even 10 to 12 touchdowns. Again, 7 scores last year on only 35 catches. Of course, that pace and that efficiency won't keep up all season, but we've seen it. The guy can score. He can get deep. He can do it after the catch. He just has that every down ability. I'm so excited to see what Jahan Dotson does. And now his price is rising about 65 or so on Underdog, maybe about round 7 or so in your home league drafts. even then, I'm still gobbling up. He's as I try to max out my entries here in best ball to close out the season. He's definitely a guy I'm trying to jam in and bump my exposure up before the season hits. What's your thoughts on Dotson?
Yeah, I'm glad that I can finally have one I disagree with here, Nick.
Yeah.
And I could definitely be wrong on this one. And I faded Jahan Dotson pretty hard this offseason. He was on my do not draft list that I posted out a couple of weeks ago as well. And that was before the Terry McLaurin turf toe injury. So I'm already a little bit more nervous because part of my reason for fading Jahan Dotson is Scary Terry. And I think you are underrating him just a little bit. He's averaging close to a 24% target share over the last 3 years. He's going to command targets. Jahan Dotson is the clear number 2 option, so it's not like he can't succeed, even if McLaurin commands targets. My overall concern, though, is I'm not so convinced about Sam Howell yet either. Like we've only seen him play one real NFL game. He looked good in that one NFL game. I think his range of outcomes is really wide, which makes Jahan Dotson and McLaurin's range of outcomes even wider. And then Dotson's is even wider than McLaurin's because he's also the number 2 guy in the offense. So I think there's like a really, really wide range of outcomes with Dotson this season. And I almost look at some of those numbers you shared the opposite way. You were mentioning he finished, I think it was, I have it in front of me here. His target share last year was still around 16%. That ranked 56th in the NFL. It's not terrible, though, for a rookie, but he had the 7th most touchdowns. Sorry, the 14th most touchdowns with 7. So you ranked 56th in target share, 14th most touchdowns. To me, that's not a good thing. To me, I would rather the guy like Deontay Johnson, who ranks top 10 in target share, scores no touchdowns, because I think you're going to regress, with those touchdowns, which are relatively unpredictable. So I want the guy that's going to get the targets, and we haven't seen it yet from Dotson. We do see the year 2 jump often. Again, definitely a wide range of outcomes here, but I think in that wide range of outcomes is a pretty abysmal season from Jahan Dotson. I'm also nervous about what this offense is going to look like, though, under the new offensive coordinator from this take from me. Like if they do end up throwing really aggressively, like we've seen in the preseason, and Sam Howell does work out. Sam Howell does have a pretty interesting college profile, 96th percentile college yards per pass attempt. But he was a 5th round pick. So it's hard for me to get super excited about a 5th round pick that I've seen play one game on an offense that really hasn't been great in the past. I think Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson will be very involved as well. I'm just not so convinced we can get Jahan Dotson to 10 touchdowns if his target share doesn't eclipse, that 23% target share that I think McLaurin's almost definitely going to get. Again, I'm nervous about that turf toe injury, though. I don't even know if McLaurin's going to be playing week 1. So I'm definitely nervous about that. But yeah, I've been fading Jahan Dotson. I'm very nervous about the worst case scenario here for this offense in a division that they might be the worst team in. And Sam Howell is really the piece, I think, that can prove me wrong here.
Yeah, he absolutely could. I think the only counter that is, I know so far at the NFL level, Dotson hasn't been a huge target earner, but coming into college, that was his whole rub. Was he was all over the field, catching the ball from horrendous quarterback play at Penn State. And just, I think he had like a 35% target share his senior year, something insane like that. So we have the ability to shoulder an entire passing game and to make bad quarterbacks look good. So it's not impossible for the kid. So if McLaurin, and it is building, I wasn't going too hard on Dotson until the McLaurin injury, because I've had Terry plenty of times in fantasy. Definitely respect the player here. But if that thing lingers, and the thing with Terry that you respect it as an NFL just fan, but fantasy wise, he's the type of guy that guts out injuries, and he might play week 1, but be at less than 100%. And then suddenly it's just lingering all year, and you're not getting full Terry all season. That is within the range of outcomes. We've seen it happen with Terry before, and I respect him as a player for it. But as a fantasy owner, you're like, just please take a couple weeks off, get yourself fully healthy. But turf toe is one of those tricky things, especially for receivers, really any position, that could linger. And we've seen Dotson be a target hog in the past. We've seen it so far this preseason as well, certainly leading the team and carrying the offense. And that, I think that just, again, I always say I don't want to overreact to preseason. Then I see it, I'm like, okay, but it's just that usage, that 5 straight targets in every layer of the field. It reminded me of what we saw when he was in college. And I just think this is a huge breakout. And I think the offense as a whole is going to really surprise. I love Gibson at cost. I love Howell as a second quarterback stab. I believe in Bieniemy, and I think this team is bought in. And I also, as mentioned with the Daniel Jones, I think that division is just going to be brewing shootouts, and people are going to be constantly chasing points. So I think we got some high scoring affairs. So we'll see. We will see for sure. In
this one, he was probably in the comment section of my Do Not Draft video the most hated player on that list. People really love Jahan Dotson a lot more than I do. So it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out.
Yes, indeed. Well, I do love this one, and I love this guy. And we already talked about that Chargers offense, and a big piece of it will be Big Mike Williams. So I'm excited to hear what's your bold prediction for him.
Yeah, so my bold prediction for Mike Williams is that he finishes the top 12 wide receiver in fantasy football this year. To me, Mike Williams is the Chargers receiver to draft this year. I think Keenan Allen has a little bit of a safer floor if he can stay healthy, which we've seen him struggle with. Keenan Allen's past that dreaded 30-year-old mark for the wide receiver position. Mike Williams is really just entering his prime at 29 years old. We saw him rank 13th in wide receiver points per game in 2021, where he played 16 games that season. That was the year we were mentioning with Justin Herbert, where he ranked second among quarterbacks. So if I'm in on Herbert, I'm in on Mike Williams. It doesn't seem like Quentin Johnson's going to threaten his role really at all. And I absolutely love the reports that they're finally going to move him around a little bit more. A lot of people have this perception of Mike Williams in fantasy that he's this boom bust guy. He goes for 20 points, then he goes for 3 points. I think that floor is really going to rise a lot if he can get some of these slot targets that are really safe, especially in PPR leagues. So yeah, I'm all in on Mike. I think that his cost right now in season long leagues, he's going around round 6, round 7. I've been taking him in round 6 in a lot of season long leagues. He's up there in my most drafted receivers in best ball, but also in season long. If I draft Herbert, I'm willing to even take Mike Williams as early as round 5. And again, I think that the boom bust thing, people care a lot less about that in best ball, but in season long, people care about that a lot. And I think that's what's driving him down draft boards, is this historical injury stuff from last year, and then also just some complete duds in given weeks. But it's going to be a much better offense this year. I think Herbert's going to get closer again to that 7.5 yards per pass attempt. We've already seen Mike Williams finish as a top 12 wide receiver in terms of points per game. So I don't think this one's even that crazy, but he's getting drafted outside the top 26 wide receivers on almost every platform. He's getting drafted after Keenan Allen in almost every draft. So I really like going after Mike Williams really aggressively this year.
I think you nailed it right on the head, where in redraft, it can be so tricky. If you've been on the Mike Williams train, you trust him and you get your 0.4, and then it's 16 when he's on your bench. At Gabe Davis last year, it can be so mind-numbing to have. But I'm 100% with you that more slot targets, which we've seen all the training camp reports about, that could really stabilize that floor. And that would go such a huge way, because then you could feel more comfortable having him in at all times. So the booms are there for you, and then the busts are just not so low. The layup targets from the slot, the mismatch that Kellen Moore is going to find with him, it sounds like he's moving all over the place. I think that is so interesting for Mike Williams. And not that I'm a Quentin Johnson fan, but it does seem like he's had somewhat of a slow camp too, because a lot of people, they play a similar role. They're both big bodies that can streak down the field. If Johnson's still coming along a little slow here too, that definitely stabilizes Mike Williams as that clear-cut, at worst, number 2 in this receiving core. Potentially could even take over Keenan Allen, or if the injury bug strikes again for an aging Keenan Allen, that's another case there. And I love the slot stuff again, because he averaged team high 12 average depth of target from the slot, but he only played about 4% of his snaps there. Right. So when he was there, he had 16 catches, 261 yards, and a touchdown on only 18 targets, but only 18 targets from the slot. That gets up to even 30. You can do so much damage with him. And again, I cannot emphasize enough how much I love Kellen Moore and what we saw, that Cowboys just juggernaut for 3 seasons till Mike McCarthy slew him down a bit. I really just think they're going to be a bonanza of points each and every week. So a huge pie, a big mouth there, big play guy. I love it. I think Mike Williams is a steal in home leagues because of that boom bust perception. And if that stables out this year, which I do think it does, he's going to just blow this price tag out of the water. So I'm fully there with you. Absolutely. And after all these buzzy names, nothing like bringing up Tyler Higbee for a bold prediction. Woohoo! I'm sure we're all on the edge of the seats for this one. Tyler Higbee. This is where everyone logs out. No, but everyone continues to say no ceiling. It's Tyler Higbee. He's been in the league forever. There's nothing here, right? And I think that's actually wrong. Last year when Cooper Kupp, and this might be, I've been high on Higbee all offseason, but especially now with Cooper Kupp and what's going on with that hamstring. And I'd love to actually hear your take and what you're going to be doing with Cooper Kupp at this point, because who knows? That's the fantasy dilemma of the final few days of drafting here. So we could dive into that in a sec. But let's, of course, the more buzzy person here, Tyler Higbee. Last year when Kupp missed those games, he averaged 21% target share, really became that number 1 guy in the offense. He had that 30-point spike week in week 16 in your fantasy playoffs. So we've seen him boom like that before. Sets his career highs, 105 targets, 71 catches. he just hasn't scored TDs, never more than 5 touchdowns in a season, but he's 6'5", moves pretty well for that size. In fact, The Athletic this summer saying Higbee looks especially quicker in short area opportunities like red zone or goal line sequences. This is the best he's looked in the 5 years since I've covered the team. Looks lean down, looks quicker. It maybe I'm also, I don't know if you were playing way back in 2019, Sam, but there was a 5-week stretch at the end of 2019 where all the receivers, Woods was hurt. I think Kupp missed the last couple of weeks. And Sean McVay just turned the keys over to Tyler Higbee, made him his full Travis Kelce. And Higbee delivered 23, 18, 23, 19, and 22 fantasy points across the last 5 weeks of 2019. Ended up being a league winner for me. And maybe, again, I'm just clinging to that 2019 here. But he had over 100 yards in 4 of those 5 weeks and never dipped outside the top 4 tight ends. I mean, it was a monstrous showcase, and maybe they're going to have to do that again. At minimum, we've seen McVay has a willingness to craft the offense around Higbee, that Higbee can rise to the occasion. I know that was a long time ago, but we're talking about pick 130, 150 type range here. And if you've punted the tight end position, I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, well, you're at 130, you might as well just keep punting it because at this point there's nobody. And Higbee's that guy I kind of land on, say, wait a minute, I think there is a true tight end one before we have to get into the true punt mode. And his name is Tyler Higbee. I think he could impress this year. Certainly if Kupp's injury lingers, but even if not, I think he has a decent upside scenario that no one seems to recognize. Maybe, am I the only one seeing this, Sam? Am I nuts for thinking Higbee could have a big ceiling?
No, I mean, I think you laid out a really good story here. To me, it's more about the floor for Tyler Higbee. And I don't even think he needs Cooper Kupp to get injured. Like you said, he had the 4th most targets at tight end last year. And I was just talking about this with Jahan Dotson. I like chasing the guys like Tyler Higbee. He was 4th in target share, but he only scored 3 touchdowns outside the top 20 in tight end touchdowns, despite being top 4 in target share. A lot of that was just the Rams offense imploding overall. But there are not very many tight ends. Like probably you could count them on one hand of guys that can realistically get 10 plus targets in a given week at the tight end position. And Tyler Higbee's on that list. To me, that gives him a really exciting floor. I definitely am super concerned about the offense still overall. I think the offensive line is going to struggle massively. I think the offense just in general has big implosion risk if Cooper Kupp is out. And that will probably lead to less touchdowns for Tyler Higbee if the offense just can't stay on the field and can't get in the red zone. But yeah, I mean, he's one of the better late round tight ends in terms of floor. Like when you're in the late rounds at tight end, you're looking at 0-point floors for almost every single tight end. I mean, even in the mid rounds, like even guys like David Njoku and Pat Freiermuth, like some of these like late end top tier tight ends, like they're going to have 0-point weeks. And I think Higbee, he has one of the less chances at 0-point weeks because of his target share in this offense. I think he's the number 2 receiver in this offense. I'm not super bullish on Van Jefferson, who didn't really step up given the opportunity last year. I'm not super bullish on, I'm not going to try to pronounce his name, but their rookie wide receiver that they have he's supposedly going to be the number 3 or number 2 guy if Cooper Kupp is out. But really, to me, it's Tyler Higbee, probably going to be second on this team in targets. We saw him over 100 targets last year. So yeah, to me, the floor, it seems high. If Cooper Kupp does play, maybe the Rams offense isn't, implosion level this year, then he can score more touchdowns too, and that will be the ceiling outcome. But yeah, you just don't have guys with a realistic, floor later in the late rounds. I'm going to, in my tight end, talk more about, I'm reaching for him more because of the ceiling. I think his floor is for sure 0-point weeks as well. But yeah, I'm in on Tyler Higbee. I've been taking him a lot too in best ball around like the tight end 13-14 range.
I think the one other point, guy, I can't wait to hear your case on the next tight end we have here that I wanted to bring up that you made me think of is like you compared him kind of to Njoku and Freiermuth, and I do see similar tier. I have them ranked very similarly, but those guys go 3-4 rounds ahead of them, and they're going when you could still get Antonio Gibson, and there's just still some quality running backs. Daniel Jones, there's good quarterbacks if you hadn't punted the position. There's good running backs still there, but those tiers drop off dramatically after that round 9-10 turn. So once that talent's gone, that's where I like to. I just see similar production come from Higbee, but a 3+ round discount and much less opportunity cost with who else is going around him. So I think that was a really interesting point to bring up as well. I'm excited for this one because I was in on your guy here, Greg Dulcich. I was in on him for a while. I've been a little concerned this preseason. Maybe you can get me back on the Greg Dulcich train. I'm excited to hear what you got for your bold predictions.
Greg Dulcich, his ADP has absolutely plummeted. He's going outside the top 20 tight ends on DraftKings and Underdog. He's going around tight end 17 on Sleeper right now. So he's going undrafted in almost every single home league. He's starting on the waiver wire, and I'm already getting the add Greg Dulcich waiver wire report week 1 right up ready because To me, I want my tight ends out there on the field. Obviously, in Greg Dulcich is not going to be out there on the field more than 70% of the snaps. Based on all these preseason reports, they prefer Adam Trotman in the run game. Greg Dulcich is not going to be a guy out there much for run blocking. But there's a lot of positive signal in Greg Dulcich's profile still. And there's also been reports that I think people have mostly glossed over because of the Adam Trotman stuff, that they really like Greg Dulcich. They want to use him in this joker role. I think he's going to be a really, really big part of their passing offense, and especially in the red zone when they're throwing. Greg Dulcich is going to be on the field, and I think he's going to be very involved. If you go back, tight ends, rookie tight ends, is one of the hardest positions to succeed, and this has been well studied. This year, maybe that changes a little bit. It's one of the best rookie tight end classes supposedly of all time. But just looking back, not thinking through this year for now, like we never see rookie tight ends succeed. It almost never happens. And if you go back all the way to the year 2000, the second most yards per game among a rookie tight end, Greg Dulcich. It goes Kyle Pitts, then Greg Dulcich in terms of yards per game as a rookie tight end. And Greg Dulcich did this on an abysmal Broncos offense last year, competing for targets with Jerry Jeudy, competing for targets with Sutton when he was healthy. And I expect this offense to benefit massively from what I call the Adam Gase effect, with the biggest coaching upgrade of the offseason, addition by subtraction, but then on top of that, like a really good coach. I think this whole offense is going to rise. Greg Dulcich is free in drafts. I want to chase, like, especially, we talked about the floor, but in best ball, I want to chase the ceiling in the later rounds. I think Greg Dulcich has 2 touchdown game ceiling in his range of outcomes. We know Sean Payton loves to use tight ends. We saw it with Jimmy Graham. We've seen it with the Saints in the past. Greg Dulcich, again, like you don't see rookie tight ends succeed. It's one of the hardest positions to succeed in as a rookie. He's now entering year 2, and he's going to be playing an exclusively passing downs, passing role. I think there's a realistic outcome here where he finishes a top 10 tight end in fantasy football, and he's going outside the top 20. So I like him a lot. And yeah, I'm getting those free agent articles, the waiver wire articles ready for week 2 in season-long leagues, because I don't think he's been drafted in any of the season-long leagues that I've done yet. And I think Tyler Higbee and Greg Dulcich are pretty compelling cases. Also, some of these rookie tight ends that are going undrafted, I don't think Luke Musgrave has been drafted in any of my season-long leagues yet. He's on the waiver wire in a bunch of my leagues. Like, this does feel like a decent year to punt the tight end position. If you're not going to land, Kelsey, Andrews, Waller, Hawkinson, those are really the only 4 that I want. Goddard's not terrible where he's going. I just think his ceiling's a little lower than those other guys who's going like a round or 2 before him. If I miss on those guys, I'm not taking a tight end until the last round, and I'm going to take Dulcich pretty much every single time in those cases.
Famous last words, tight ends deep this year. I say it every year too. And then every year I'm like, why did I take Travis Kelce? I set an alarm for myself at the end of every fantasy season, take Travis Kelce 101. And I never do it, and I always regret it. But no, it does honestly feel, especially if this rookie class is as hyped between Kincaid, Musgrave, Laporta, there's definitely some ceiling cases here. But Dulcich is a really interesting one because he is getting driven down based on preseason usage. And I get it. It is important to kind of see that Troutman's in on all the snaps and he's only in on passing downs. But really, when are we getting fantasy points out of the tight end? In fact, this is going to maybe protect him from getting hurt and blocking, which he's not even good at. I love that Joker role quote. I saw that early in the offseason, and Sean Payton's so creative that if he has this type of vision for Dulcich, even if it is only on 60, 70% of the snaps, that could be invaluable. And as you mentioned, the only guy to have success in an absolute dumpster fire of a year last year was 7th in air yards among tight ends and missed the first half of the season. I mean, he was already used extremely in that vertical down the seam, flashing the athleticism. I like the Dulcich call a lot. And then you got Jeudy out for whoever knows how long. They're going to need some targets here. Sutton, who knows if he can rebound? A lot of good reports on him, and I like a bounce back in a Sean Payton offense. I like Marvin Mims, a really intriguing rookie, but Dulcich was the only one that showed a good rapport with Russell Wilson last year, and I think it's a really intriguing, especially now that the price has dropped. It took a little while for the market to adjust, but now that you can get him outside the top 20 tight ends, I think it makes complete sense. At minimum, an early season surge, and then maybe they just keep building on that because he filled in so reliably while Jerry Jeudy was out. So I think it's a really interesting one. Absolutely. So if you punt the tight end position, Higbee, Dulcich, a nice floor ceiling combo, I think it's a great way to approach the position. Absolutely. Well, that wraps it up. That's our 8 bold predictions. So Thank you again so much for coming on today, Sam.
Nick,
Before we let you go, we have a few questions in the mailbag. What'd you say?
I want to touch on the Cooper Kupp stuff really quickly. I'm
Oh
interested.
yeah, because that's great. Yeah. What are you doing with Cooper Kupp?
Yeah, so we moved him down. He was number 3 in our ranks pretty much all offseason. It went Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp. And then I think he maybe moved to 4 at some point, right behind McCaffrey. But we've had him in the top 4 all offseason. And he started to slide down a little bit from that first hamstring injury to like the 8-9 range. He went 9th overall in a draft I did a couple weeks ago. We now have him ranked 16th because we're projecting him out for week 1. And that moved him all the way down to 16 in our overall ranks. I've had kind of the philosophy for the past 3 years in fantasy that I'm not going to pretend like I can predict injuries. So for a guy like Michael Thomas, I'm not like factoring that into his profile that much because he's currently healthy. But once guys actually pick up real injuries in the preseason, like I almost entirely fade them. Like if injuries are going to find my fantasy team, it's already hard enough as it is from the injury perspective. I don't need to draft guys that are already injured. There's plenty of healthy guys I can draft instead. So usually I just fade guys with injuries altogether. So this year that includes Cooper Kupp, Jerry Jeudy, Terry McLaurin. Those are the names that come to me first. I'm interested to hear though how you're approaching that too, because Cooper Kupp is such a tough one to fade. He's been number 1 in wide receiver fantasy points per game each of the last 2 years. I mean, he had more points per game last year than Justin Jefferson when he was healthy. Like that number 1 league winning wide receiver is well within his range of outcomes when healthy. But it's just tough to draft a guy that is looking unlikely to play in week 1.
I'm with you. I certainly take a little bit of a different approach in best ball versus home leagues. Home leagues, I just don't see the need to absorb that unnecessary risk for the most part. I actually dropped him to 17 on my big board, so we're right in line there. I won't take him in round 1 in either formats, but once he starts to creep into round 2 and certainly late round 2, I've got a couple best ball drafts here late, and I'm with you. Maybe this is just like the sunk cost fallacy. I'm just going all in because I had so much of him in my top 5, and now I'm seeing him at 18, and I'm just like, I can't pass him up at 18 when I was taking him at 4 all offseason. I have a team with McCaffrey and Cooper Kupp, so I'm starting to get unique builds. Or I even had a DraftKings one where he fell all the way to the end of round 2, and I got Jefferson and Cooper Kupp. And it's just at that point, you got it. You're facing 1 million people. You're trying to get $3 million. You got to swing for the ceiling. So in those type of formats, I'm all for hoping the best case plays out, and I have Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson by week 17, and I'm still alive. That could be nuts. But in home leagues, do you really need that risk? So I won't take Kupp ahead of St. Brown or CD Lamb, that kind of tier of guys, rounding it out with Lamb for me personally. After they're off the board, if I feel good about my round 1 pick, and you should take someone like a Kelsey, someone you feel very secure about, I'm okay taking that risk on mid to late second. It is kind of sketchy. He's going to see a specialist, and maybe that it's sketchy, but maybe they find something out. He is over 30, and it does, of all the first 2 round picks, he's certainly now the riskiest. There's no doubt about that. I don't know. There's no clear answer because you could take him in late round 2 and win your league because of it. It could just be a blown round 2 pick. So if you are confident that you can maybe absorb that and you have the waiver wire skills, which I think hopefully our listeners and I'm sure your users do, I'm okay taking him anywhere mid to late second. But I won't take him in the first at this point. It's just you can't do that. And you can kind of gauge too, like in leagues I've done and people that have Kupp, you see like they would trade Kupp for Lamb, for St. Brown. I've even seen like T. Higgins thrown out there, and I'd take Kupp over T. Higgins at this point. But it's just crazy. The panic is real at this point. So I'm under the philosophy mid to late second. That's where I can absorb the risk. That's where I'll take it. But anywhere before that, there's just enough safer players with maybe not the ceiling. There's no one that has Cooper Kupp ceiling, like you said, number 1 in points per game back-to-back years. So no one can match that upside in round 2. But also the floor is just, it could be, you don't see him all year and then you just have nothing, which would suck. So I think mid to late round 2 is where that balances out for me, and I'm willing to take him. Is there a player that you're like, this is where the cutoff is for me and this is where I would take him?
Yeah, well, I think like it's tough for me because there's a lot of guys I like in round 2. I feel like after, Tony Pollard goes in round 2, Saquon Barkley goes in round 2, some of those like the high end running backs. I even like, it's kind of tough for me right now even to pull the trigger on Kupp over a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs, who I like a lot, Devontae Smith, Calvin Ridley, who I like a lot in the back end of the second, early third too. After that tier, like I would for sure be pulling the trigger on Cooper Kupp, but he's going in the second round still in almost every single draft that I've been doing. So yeah, it's tough for me. I think I agree. I would take him over a guy like Olave, over a guy like T. Higgins. But I don't know. I can't draft guys that are already injured. I know the injury bug's going to find my teams as it is. And yeah, I mean, Cooper Kupp, I really hope he does get healthy because I've drafted way too much of him at this point. And football is just more fun with Cooper Kupp, and the Rams are way more fun with Cooper Kupp. So I do hope he can get back early in the season. But yeah, there's some real, 0-point season outcomes here where Cooper Kupp, especially if the Rams start really slow, which they probably will. I think they have one of the worst defenses in the league too. I mean, the Rams could really struggle this year. I think like them and the Cardinals right now are in contention for the first overall pick. So I'm nervous for Cooper Kupp, and I think what you said though is reasonable. Like in second round, his ceiling is still wide receiver 1 when he returns. So it's not unreasonable to take him in round 2. There's just plenty of guys I like in round 2 that aren't injured that I'm going to be taking over Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, I agree there too. And I guess it's not a huge consideration, but if your league does have IR spots, it does make it a little better to absorb that risk. If you're not burning a complete bench spot on him, you can put him in the IR, pick up Puka Nacua, see if he can be a mini Cooper Kupp light and get you that bridge to Kupp. But that is a real risk too. If they suck these first couple weeks and decide we just want to go all in for Caleb Williams and they shut down Stafford, they just see why would we ever bring Kupp back like that. That is an added risk, too, that I wasn't even factoring in. So if they start out, I like the fact that their defense is going to suck early on because I was like, they'll just be chucking all the time and playing catch up. But at a certain point, there is that just let's sell the farm, let's shut it all down. And that if Cooper Kupp's not back in 4 weeks and they're 0-4 and Stafford's dinged up, it could be just done. Let's tank the rest of the year.
First year in a long time, the Rams own their own first round pick, too, going into this draft. So there is that risk for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's a scary, scary play. No need to absorb the unnecessary risk in most home leagues, in my opinion, unless it's late round 2. So yeah, we're aligned on that approach. But in best ball, if you're still drafting, you're maxing out your 150. You want to get some unique builds because again, you're trying to separate from 500,000 to if you're on the DraftKings, 1 million people. Maybe that is where you pull the trigger on a Jefferson and Cooper Kupp or a Chase Kupp. If you can get Kupp with some of those top 5 guys that he would never have otherwise been paired with, there's going to be very few teams in the field with that, and it does give you a ceiling like no other should it all peak the right way. But otherwise, a redraft, I do not see it being worth the risk at this point. So I'm with you. I have an auction draft, my main league, coming up on Tuesday, and I'm very intrigued to see what his price is going to be because I'll be very tempted. I don't know. I put maybe up to $30, but after that, I don't know if I can cross that $30. But if he's going for 20, 25, again, Cooper Kupp. It's Cooper Kupp. I can't stop myself from there. Well, Sam, this was an absolute blast. I appreciate you coming on an early Monday morning. I'm going to mow through the mailbag, but I know you said you might have to get running. So is there anything you want to pump up before you get rolling?
No, man, I had a lot of fun. The only thing I would shout out real quick, check out the WalterPicks app. Definitely been working really hard on that for the last 3 years. I think we're number 6 or 7 in the sports app rankings right now, which is super, super cool. It's going to help you with your draft. You can sync your ESPN Yahoo Sleeper League. It's going to help you with your draft, waivers, start sit decisions. The trade analyzer is really big during the season, too, to make sure you don't get fleeced. Definitely check that out. Nick, always fun and good luck this season, man. I hope to see you in the Best Ball Mania finals later.
Me as well. Yeah. Best of luck to you as well, Sam. And congrats. That's awesome. Exciting news that you guys are up that far. Great to see you dominated, man. That's great stuff. So congrats on that and best of luck this year.
Have a good one, Nick.
You as well. Cheers. All righty. And thanks again, Sam and WalterPicks, for coming on here on an early Monday. It looks like we had a few classic Wolfpack legends here in the comments. So I want to make sure to answer all your questions that you guys got here before we head out and enjoy our Monday, last kind of day of summer here. What a morning to stay at. Exactly, David. Love it. Wolf RSJ coffee. Get the morning started, baby. Danny Dimes is kind of my secret crush, David. And you know, as well as any loyal fan, that Hillary is a Giants fan. So we can kind of share the body pillow. It's brought us really close together. A cuddle. We have the Daniel Jones body pillow in between us, and we just kind of cuddle it together. It's very nice. It's made us. My Daniel Jones love has brought us together as a couple closer. So that's the added benefit of loving Daniel Jones this year, right, David? 5 a.m. Pacific. Oh, yeah, Michael. Burning that early oil here with us, Michael. Love to see it. Life is good. Enjoying that day off, hopefully. Unless you're up at 5 a.m., who knows? But either way, hopefully we're making the workday better for you. Took Taylor at 601 in a 10-team league. So, Toons, I think that's a really good question. I think that's where you can stomach the risk. And certainly in a 10-team league where the waiver is going to have more replaceable options, especially if you have an IR spot, too, where you can put him in there and get an extra bench spot. I think round 6 is definitely the right spot. I have him right around 68, I think, in my ranking, so maybe a little earlier than I would have done it. But also, again, in the settings with again 10 teams, easier to absorb risk, easier to make up the ground with your waiver wire. I think it makes sense. I do worry, though, that this is one where I'm not going to shed another drop of blood for my team until I get traded. But there is still, it's not like just because the first trade deadline, their trade deadline passed, that he can't get moved. I was a little worried, like, why are the Packers in? They have Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. If there's one thing they don't need, it's running backs. But that's a good run scheme. That would not be the ideal spot. Miami still remains that ideal destination for Jonathan Taylor. I think 601 is certainly where the risk and the reward starts. The cheaper you get him, obviously, the more the risk is minimized. And right around round 6 or beyond is where I'd start to consider it, especially depending on my team build as well. So good question, Tunes. Is there a way to crowdfund the creation delivery of a Danny Dime or Justin? Yeah. Give me both, like a two-headed nightmare. One head is Daniel Jones and one is Justin Herbert, and I can, kiss them, and it'll just be beautiful. We'll get that on crowdfunding. I'm sure it will blow up Westy. Everybody trying to get me that body pillow. Was taking Bijan? No, Tunes. It's not. We were just talking about Bijan, and for me, he's not my favorite first-round pick, but absolutely, he could finish as the number 1 running back. Let's lay out the bull case, because I don't want to make you feel bad for taking Bijan. You should never feel bad for him. He's going top 7 for a reason in ADP. One, he's a generational prospect. Some call him Adrian Peterson and Saquon Barkley mix type of guy. And the tape shows he is that good. He's going to a run game that is dominant. One of the run heaviest team in the league last year, the most yards per carry, a dominant run blocking line that made Jags. Tyler Algier, a good player. He's okay. Averaging over, every single running back on their team averaged over 4.8 yards per carry. Though it didn't matter who ended up going in there. So I think, Bijan's in a great spot. I do worry Arthur Smith's tendency to misuse his elite talents. He doesn't use Kyle Pitts to his fullest. Maybe he wants to keep Bijan fresh, and he loves Tyler. Tyler Algier did run for 1,000 yards. I would not be surprised to see this being closer to like a 55-45, 60-40 than a first-round pick necessarily should dictate. I think Bijan's going to be great, though. A great talent and a great run environment is usually a recipe for success. It's more about the opportunity cost. Who did you pass up instead of for Bijan? And I've seen him going above Eckler, and I personally prefer both Pollard, Chubb, and Saquon over Bijan. And then I take Bijan 6 after them. That's why I just don't end up with him much. Every ability to outscore those guys, there's no doubt about it. He's just not the guy that I'm taking most often, Tunes. David Campanelli. Wes, setting up the body pillow there. Yeah, exactly. Extra roster pot, full PPR. I have Cam. Would you grab? I love Kyron Williams, but I would be more intrigued to see what Van Jefferson does with Kupp. So I would grab him if you have that extra spot, David. Had multiple guys take 2 tight ends and 1 guy. Yeah, come on. In a best ball, that makes sense. In a home league, you do not need 3 tight ends. Sam said the secret name of the day, Kyle Pitt. Yeah, fight with the, yeah, exactly. Rewarded for the fight with the truth. What's going on, Brett? Good to see you. Welcome on in. If we can find Danny Dimes, enough of the Danny Dimes. Yeah, the whole chat. Let's buy the wolf about Danny Dimes body pillow. I'm sure we can get the crowd rallied up for that. I already have one, David. I don't need a new one. Did start Drake London or Christian Kirk for week 1? Brett, I'm not going to lie. I haven't made my week 1 rankings quite yet. That's going to be a project for today. I would be going off the top of my head, probably Drake London. I'll just be live with you. I'm not positive on who they're facing week 1. So if you don't mind, if you have a week 1 matchup question, please do include that in here. I'll keep ripping through the questions, but that would be helpful. My gut does say Drake London, though, just given that he has that whopping target share with his time with Desmond Ridder, was on pace for over 1,400 yards in their games together. I'm a big fan of that. What's up, Lynchy? We are live. Me and Sam just ripped an awesome bold prediction show, so definitely rewind, check that one out if you missed the beginning of the stream. My man Sam, the CEO over there, WalterPicks, some great but bold but very reasonable predictions in my opinion. CMC, Chubb, Eckler, Barkley. It's crazy to see the running back mindset is still alive and well. I've certainly embraced, if you read my draft guide, I've embraced more of a quote unquote jellyfish mindset where you just flow to the best position. You keep as many doors and flexibility open as you can. So I love running back receiver starts. I don't mind running back starts. If that's where it falls, it's where it falls. But I used to be, you got to get 2 backs early and often. And I have plenty of 3-4 receiver starts. And I still like the Madisons, the J.K. Dobbins. I love all that stuff. So yeah, thank you for the love. Yeah, Sam is the absolute man. We know each other, one, just through the fantasy space, but also we both did Teach for America. So we have a little history off the field as well. So I always love catching up with Sam. We're in a league together with a fellow group of teachers and stuff as well. He is the absolute man, though. I thought we had some good predictions throughout the show, Lynchy. So I hope you enjoy. Please do let me know your thoughts. And of course, you like Sam, you probably will like our stuff as well. So Roto Street Journal is where you can find all our stuff. RotoStreetJournal.com, Roto Street Journal on YouTube, wherever. And I'm at Roto Street Wolf on Twitter if you want to hit me up and let me know you were here today. Great show. Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, Sam's always an awesome person. Found a 2-inch Daniel Jones body pillow. Send it my way. Jack, Olivia, how do you feel about T. Higgins this year? What's not to love? I don't see any reason why he has too much of a higher ceiling or a lower floor than what we've seen, which is right around the top 12 receivers each and every year. I think Jamar Chase, we saw it as the season went on last year, Jack. He really continued to separate as the true number 1 receiver. This used to often be a 1A, 1B, and you can expect similar target shares in Jamar Chase's rookie year. And he really separated last year as it went on. That being said, that's not a bad place to be, the number 2 in the explosive Bengals offense. You look at, there's plenty of Jalen Waddles, and they all kind of go in the same range too. Devonta Smith, number 2s in explosive offenses. I don't need you to be labeled the 1 on the field. They're definitely wide receiver 1s in fantasy, particularly if you get T. Higgins in round 3 and you start with a great receiver, another running back on the way back, and then tease your number 2 on your fantasy team. I think it's really solid. So I predict him right around as usual, 1,200 to 1,300 yards, 9 to 10 touchdowns. I think is very reasonable. I don't see the only thing I don't love about drafting Higgins is I don't see a season-winning potential, because even last year when Chase was out, he didn't necessarily elevate that game to be that true top 5 that everyone was hoping for. But I just very, very high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1. Happy to draft him anywhere at that 2-3 turn or beyond in round 3. I'm a big fan of T. Always love the player. And piece of the Bengals offense never hurt by any means. So, all right, that seems to wrap up the questions here. Thank you guys for some great mailbag interaction. Again, I'm at Roto Street Wolf. If you want to get your question in, you missed this one, on the way out, the thumbs up button does truly help us out so much to get out to more people, continuing to grow the show. So whether you want to give it to Sam, want to give it to me, go for it. All right, Jack. If you guys are here, I mean, it's Labor Day. I'm happy to keep answering questions. I might toss on a best ball in a second and just answer any questions over on the Roto Street page, because it is draft season. I know people got draft questions, so I'm going to be firing them up all day anyways. Might as well go live. So if you guys have any more questions, I'll probably fire up a stream in a sec on that sense. But CeeDee Lamb. So Jack, if you haven't seen it, but we did a show on quote unquote busts, and I actually had CeeDee Lamb as my bust. Now I'm getting raked over the coals already in the comments, and this is not a CeeDee Lamb's a bad player take at all. Phenomenal, unbelievable player. I've loved CeeDee Lamb in dynasty leagues. I took him as in a bunch of dynasty leagues as a rookie. Very, very big fan of the player. I just see a couple causes for concern. One, bringing in Brian Schottenheimer instead of Kellen Moore. I think immediately that shrinks the overall offensive aerial pie here. Schottenheimer's only ranked above the top 17 once in 10 years of calling plays, and that was at 13. All the other years have been like bottom 20, many years in the bottom. And I don't expect that for that. Mike McCarthy's here. He was typically pass happy with Green Bay. He'll probably be the one really calling the shots. But he said, I want to run the damn ball. He brings in one of the most run-heaviest coaches. So I do think a shrinking of the overall pie happens. And then I think you bring in Brandon Cooks. Michael Gallup, a year removed from the surgery, another one, and feeling springy, looking like himself again. So to me, I just don't see CeeDee Lamb hitting the 4th most targets in the league again. I think he'll get used plenty. But ultimately, I think the pie shrinks, the target share shrinks just a little bit, and that's enough to bring the targets from 156 to maybe 120. And now he goes from well over 100 catches to maybe 90 to 100. And I still think he's going to be great. I still take him definitely mid-round 2. But where you're taking him now, you have to pass up Tony Pollard. You have to pass up Saquon Barkley. So some of these elite running backs. I also just personally prefer Garrett Wilson as the new Devontae Adams. I like it on St. Brown more. So to me, factoring the opportunity cost of who goes around him and just I project him just a little lower than last year. I don't love him where he goes, but he's got the talent to make me look like a complete idiot here. So I just don't end up with a ton of them because of the opportunity cost and what I see. No, it's all good. I like the question, Jack. Good question. It's worth talking about. Top of the morning to you, itty bitty South City. Great to see you guys. I love all the questions. Keep them coming. But again, Wolfpack, thank you again so much. And thanks again one more to Sam at WalterPicks. Check out the WalterPicks app if you haven't already. It can help you dominate any remaining drafts you got. And then, of course, I love their in-season stuff as well. I always just love Sam. Very smart guy. So definitely check out his stuff. And if you enjoyed my stuff, it's at rotostreetjournal.com. We got our new draft guide, only $10 for draft season. We cut it down half the price. We just wanted to get it out to people. And if you can't even pay the $10, just send me a DM and we'll figure it out. I just want you guys to see what we got over there. Gotten good feedback on that. So that's at rotostreetjournal.com, all that good stuff. I'm at RotoStreetWolf on Twitter. One last trade question, it sounds like, or a little grade. So this is a little too general for me, looking at a whole team and then just saying, what trades should you make? That's a tough call there. I would say it's a pretty well-balanced team, though. You got Hawks, so you got a nice tight end. I think the receiver depth could be a little better, but I mean, I love Ridley and Keenan Allen at the top, and I love Dotson. If you just watch the bold predictions, itty bitty South City, it's 10-teamer, so it is different, but I think you did a good job getting a Hawk and a T-Law, so you have the onesie edge, in the bottom of the onesies. That's where you can really separate in a 10-team league, in my opinion. And then your depth is solid. Saquon Pollard, I mean, I don't think you messed up at all. I think that having those two horses at the top is a huge edge. So Itty, I really like your team. I honestly don't see a ton of moves for you. I do not think you messed up. I like if I'm in that like 12 range, the 10 to 12, the bottom of the draft. I kind of like my RBRB build when Ridley and Keenan Allen can fall back to you in the next 2 rounds. I think you executed it perfectly. I don't know that there's many trades to make. I think you did a really, really nice job there, itty bitty South City. All righty, Wolfpack. Well, thanks again for the awesome, insightful questions. At RotoStreetWolf, at rotostreetjournal.com, and of course, WalterPicks. Check them out. A thumbs up on the way out does nice, free, easy way to help us continue to get out to more people. Thanks again for being here. Enjoy your Labor Day Mondays. Best of luck in all your leagues. And Wolf